invite Senators Rogner and Timken to provide sponsored testimony. Welcome to committee.
Thank you, Chair Matthews and Ranking Member Lawson Rowe and members of the House Veterans and Military Development Committee. Thank you for the opportunity to provide sponsored testimony on Senate Bill 244, which upon enactment would designate August 26th as Abbey Gate Remembrance Day.
In 2021, the United States was evacuating Afghanistan. Hamid Karzai International Airport was the only way out. A crowd of civilians, both Afghan and American citizens, hastily attempted to escape the imminent Taliban capture of Kabul by fleeing to the airport. U.S. forces checked visas, passports, and other identification by a canal named Abbey Gate on the perimeter of the airport before letting civilians in. On August 26th, the terrorist group ISIS-K launched an attack on the airport when a bomb detonated from an explosive belt, worn by a suicide bomber. Gunfire ensued, followed by the counterfire from U.S. troops. 169 Afghan civilians died, more than 150 were injured, and 13 U.S. troops tragically lost their lives. The Abbey Gate terrorist attack became the largest single loss of life of U.S. personnel since the 2011 Afghanistan Boeing Chinook shoot-down. The names of the 13 American heroes should not be forgotten. They are Staff Sergeant Darren T. Hoover, U.S. Marine Corps; Sergeant Johanny Rosario Pichardo, U.S. Marine Corps; Sergeant Nicole L. Gee, U.S. Marine Corps; Corporal Hunter Lopez, U.S. Marine Corps; Corporal Dagan W. Page, U.S. Marine Corps; Corporal Humberto A. Sanchez, U.S. Marine Corps; Lance Corporal David L. Espinoza, U.S. Marine Corps; Lance Corporal Jared N. Schmitz, U.S. Marine Corps; Lance Corporal Riley J. McCullum, U.S. Marine Corps; Lance Corporal Dylan R. Marola, U.S. Marine Corps; Lance Corporal Kareem M. Nukui, U.S. Marine Corps; Petty Officer 3rd Class Maxton W. Soviak, U.S. Navy, an Ohioan; and Staff Sergeant Ryan C. Naus, U.S. Army.
By forming a day of remembrance, their courage, their bravery, and ultimate sacrifice for this great nation will be recognized, honored, and never forgotten. 4 years ago, Joe Burdick, a United States Navy veteran, made a promise to the family of Maxton Soviak, an Ohio native from Berlin Heights, that he would do everything he could to keep their son's memory alive. That promise would extend to all the families of the 13 heroes that died protecting and defending Abbey Gate. While attending a Lincoln Day dinner, Joe sparked conversation about recognizing the sacrifices of the 13 service members. Joe explained how he has helped raise money for their charities and has had a couple of mothers on his podcast to share their son's stories. As a veteran himself, he did not want their names and stories to be lost. Rather, he wanted to honor them by keeping his promise of recognizing their courage. We cannot promise to never forget if we do not learn their names and their stories. By remembering the tragedy of August 26, 2021, we ensure that their sacrifice was not in vain, but recognized as a moment where American strength and virtue was displayed. We appreciate Chair Richardson for hearing this bill so quickly after it was passed unanimously in both the Senate Armed Services, Veterans Affairs, and Public Safety Committee and on the Senate floor 2 weeks ago. And Chair Holmes, thank you. Thank you again for the opportunity to testify today, and we would be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Yes, thank you, Senators. Committee, are there any questions? Representative Gambari.
Thank you, Chair. Senators, thank you for this legislation today. I want to take a moment just to share with the committee that this is pretty personal to me. I was one of the officers in charge of Maxton's funeral services I think what struck me the most was as we were standing guard over Maxton's casket, realizing that when I initially enlisted in the Army, Max was just 7 days old. And he lived his entire life essentially at a time when our nation was at conflict and at war since 2001 till his tragic passing. You know, Max is still making an impact, as well as all of his comrades that passed that day in their respective communities and in our nation. I think it's so important that we never allow their names to be silent. I also wanted to offer up to the committee that I briefly chatted with the senators ahead of time, and with their concurrence, I would like to work on an amendment just to specify in the actual bill language the branches of service. You know, for example, you know, we have a staff sergeant, you know, named in there, Staff Sergeant Picardo, for example, United States Marine Corps, but we also have staff sergeants in the Army, the Air Force, the Marine Corps, our non-seagoing services. So just delineating that in the bill language, I think, would provide a little more context, and I'd be happy to work with you too on that. But thank you very much for bringing this forward today.
Thank you. Thank you. And to the chair and Representative Gambari, thank you for your words, your touching story. And yes, speaking on behalf of both of us, would be happy to see that amendment into this bill.
Thank you. Committee, any further questions? I think we're all in unison here. So thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you very
Thanks.
much.
This concludes the first hearing on Senate Bill 244. I now call forward House Bill 576 for